potent advice, and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jaime Masters, and today on the show we have Garrett Gunderson. He runs wealthfactory.com. It's an amazing business. He's a New York Times bestselling author for Killing Sacred Cows, which is a crazy awesome name, which you'll go into in just a bit. He says he's the personal finance expert for entrepreneurs because we need that. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Garrett.
Hey, it's already started out really well because I did a podcast last week and someone said I was the author of Killing Scared Crows, which just sounds mean and vicious, and it's not what I'm about, you know? And we didn't harm cows in making the book. It's just the sacred cows of the mind, you know?
I kind of like the crow thing. Now I'm going to make like a little new book cover for you and send that to you just so you
Seriously,
know.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what the book is about and what you actually do for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that book's about the 9 main persuasive financial myths that people don't see because they're really subtle lies. It's like, oh, this is just the way it's been done, so this is how I'll do it. So I address each one so people can think for themselves. And for entrepreneurs, the number one factor in that book is permission to succeed, because there's so many things that weigh them down and they think they should be doing that actually slows their growth. And when they read it, they go, wait, this is my language. This is written how I think. And so all of a sudden it clicks, and then they just are more powerful moving forward. So,
okay, now we totally have to talk about that. Tell us what to do. What are those things and how do we change it?
Okay, so I'll cover 4 of the things.
Okay.
And the reason 4 is the number one thing is the most important, but it's also the most philosophical. So then I'll get into some more granular things.
Perfect.
But I started the very first chapter calling it the finite pie, because no amount of luck, no saving, no discipline, no rate of return, no financial advisor ever saves someone if they're in the scarcity mindset. Scarcity is the ultimate culprit and destroyer of wealth. So when people think that way, they don't know how to invest. They think like, here's an example of scarcity. Budgeting is scarcity for most people. They get into constraint, they get into reductionist thinking, and no one shrinks their way to wealth. So if all of a sudden all your energies are in what you can save, you miss out the insight of what you can invest. So let's apply this to business. I know too many business owners that try to save money by hiring bad employees. Now, they don't call them bad employees. They just hire people that are cheaper, but they also don't produce as much.
They're like, I'm going to get a deal. Oh, wait, that didn't work. Yeah.
And then you like go home, you're worried about them because they're not doing their job. You have to manage them. You're trying to motivate them all the time. And it just destroys your own production. And more importantly, it destroys life, because I can't think of anything more stressful as than when I go home worried about something that's going on in the business, because it doesn't happen very often anymore. But when I had crappy employees early on and I started, it's happened all the time. And I would I would complain to my wife about it, you know?
That's amazing. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about how we can get out of that scarcity mindset, because sometimes we don't realize that we're doing it either.
Okay, 3 ways to do it.
Okay.
First one, this is ultimately practical. See, scarcity is a selfish place. People don't think of it as selfish because they're just thinking about survival. But we're not thinking about others when we're in scarcity. We're just thinking about ourselves. So one of the best ways to get out of scarcity is make a list right now of the top 20 relationships in your life. The people that you always get energy when you're around them, that you can always contribute value for. And then anytime you find yourself in scarcity, you have to call one of them up. Don't call up your mom. Don't call up your best friend that's going to tell you it's not your fault and it's okay. Like, okay, you can have 5 minutes. You can do a 5-minute timeout where you get a vent. They get to hug you and tell you it's not your fault. But then you have to call someone on this list, and you don't get to tell them about your problems. Instead, you're going to ask them questions. Let me give examples of the questions. Hey, Jaime, what are you most excited about that you're up to right now? What is the number one thing that if it was in your life right now would take you to that next level of prosperity? What biggest challenge? You just ask questions until one thing happens. It clicks in your mind where you can support them, and then you create value for them in that moment. And guess what they do? They say thanks. They appreciate you. And it's hard to be in scarcity when you're delivering value for someone else. So you build a value muscle when you do that. So that's the first step.
Okay, hold on. I love that. Okay. My best friend will only let me vent for 5 minutes at a time, which was really, really, really annoying at first. Now it's so much better. And I didn't realize how not easy, but how simple it was to switch to that other side. So how do we have that list that we write down for later. Yeah. How do we know when we're in that mode so we can make sure to call one of those people?
Okay, there's There's the kind of footprints that will let you know.
Okay.
Here's the first one. You find yourself in complaining. So you complain about something. Number two, you want to change something that happened in the past. That's a big one, because when people get stuck on that, then number three, we're no longer excited about anything going on in the future. That's another situation. Number four, we're looking to blame others for the situation that we're currently facing. So I could kind of go through hundreds of these, but
we're so good at this. Yeah, you've got them right there. So the funny thing is that you've got this down so pat. I want to hear the rest of the numbers that you were going through. We were still only on one, but I'm so impressed. We're going to have to talk about in a little bit how quickly you are with this content, because I don't think anybody that I've asked has gone, okay, step 5, step 4, you're really good at this. So continue, and then we'll circle back around to that.
Okay. Is it okay that I'm frozen? Am I frozen on your
You're
screen
not
or just on
frozen on
mine?
me at all. Yep.
Okay. Then I don't care. Then I'll just keep going, because I wasn't, yeah.
Do it.
So let's see. We were at ways to detect scarcity. So we've gone through some of that.
Yes.
We've gone through this whole thing I call committed complaining. See, there's 3 things that really harm organizations, or one isn't that bad. The other 2 are pretty bad. One is gossip. Gossip is where people are definitely in scarcity. They're trying to get someone else to buy into their belief about someone else or some other situation with no solution attached to it whatsoever. And Harvard Business Review did a study saying businesses that go bankrupt, they allow too much gossip, and that takes up too much productive time, and it becomes super expensive on a firm.
Wow.
So the solution is what I call committed complaining. Committed complaining is you go and you vent so that you're not just processing it in your own head, but then you are committed to doing something once the venting's over. And you're not going to try to get someone else to blame someone else or take your side on something. You're just trying to get something off your chest. So now you can think more clearly. Then you can go have that conversation, right? So you don't want to gossip. You don't want to complain. Instead, you want to have a committed complaint, or just a conversation where you begin the conversation saying, this is my intent. This would be the best outcome. And by the way, those really difficult conversations, it's funny, I'm now into another process. I use a process. It's just 5 simple steps. Tough conversations begin with acknowledging them and what you appreciate about them authentically. You can't shine them on, but why are they in your life in the first place? Secondly is, what liability did you bring to the table? What is it that you've not done? Maybe you didn't communicate enough, or you had something and you just own that. And so when you take responsibility, it allows a possibility to start to occur. Then the third thing is, you actually go to them and you say, it says my video is turned off.
Yeah, it just went away. It's okay. Bring it back on.
Yeah.
So then
the third thing is where you actually address the situation at hand as factually as possible, just saying it and stating it. But then here's the magic. Once you say it, I might say, Jaime, you know what? Whatever it is. Then I just say, what would you do if you're in my shoes? And then all of a sudden they start thinking of things. And what I found is most sane people are harder on themselves than I would ever be. So at that point, I can use a softener and go to step 4, which is, I appreciate that, but here's what I see that we could do moving forward. And then I just come up with a strategy that they then agree to or disagree. And then we kind of keep work through it. And then the 5th step is 24 to 48 hours later, I have another conversation. I say, you know what? I approached you about something. It was a little tough yesterday. Just wondering, now that you had time to process it, anything you'd like to say?
Okay. That's amazing.
And by the way, that's the hardest part, because then you have to be quiet, and you could tell I don't do good at being quiet. But that's where you just get quiet and you listen.
Like, shut up. But I'm sure you get a ridiculous amount of response and feedback based on that for step 5.
Oh, totally. And I had one of these conversations this week, and the response I got was, man, that was an amazing conversation. I mean, you know, the person I had the conversation with, they say 90% of what you get out of me is how you approach me. So that's why I always approach with, this is what's good. This is what I've personally done wrong that I want to own up and acknowledge. And then here's the issue at hand. And it becomes less emotional as you move through those steps. And then the 4th step is, what are we going to do about it? And then we rescheduled another meeting that we're going to have an extended meeting to talk about it again, to come to a solution. Now, there are those people that you go through this and they're insane. You got to realize 1 in 17 people in the population are mentally insane. So they're not going to be great to work with or talk to. So when you go through the second time and it's like you're dealing with the same stuff over, and the third time, that's where I use my next formula. Friends versus friendly.
Okay.
So people I'm friends with make that top 20 list for certain. I say yes to their invitations anytime I possibly can. I even move mountains sometimes to say yes. I say no to people's invitations that are on the friendly list. The friendly list are the people that I don't want to have I went through a program in my early 20s. A lot of people probably know about it, Landmark.
Yes.
When I finished Landmark, I actually was kind of an a-hole at first because people would like ask me a question. I would say no. And it was just like, cool, that's awesome. I guess that's a no. And it's just like so abrupt, right? So I kind of learned how to have a positive no over time and how to leave them feeling connected, but without having to connect myself to people that didn't share my values. So I stopped in, but I never shined someone on like, hey, we should do lunch sometime if I'm never going to do that, you know? And if someone says we should do lunch sometime, I'll say, you know what? I'm preparing to leave for Italy. I'm 100% committed to a few projects and then I'm gonna be gone. So, you know, I really appreciate the invite, but I'm gonna have to say, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not going to be able to do that at this time. Then I'm not lying to someone. I'm not getting in a place where I'm losing my power. So those are the people I'm friendly with. I say no, and I never invite them. And I say yes to people I'm friends with, and I invite them to stuff. And as simple as that is, talk about going from scarcity to abundance when you're spending time with people that you love, that appreciate who you are, instead of people who want to take you down because maybe you're more successful or maybe they don't like something. And it's like, cool, they can go ahead and hate all they want. I'm just not going to put myself in that situation anymore. Oh. I'm just going to say no.
I'm going to say no, but in a nice way. Okay. Can you turn your video back on? Because it did turn off. Okay. Yeah. So when we're looking at friends versus friendly, how do we determine who goes on who? I get the energy part, like, oh, do I feel like I'm getting better energy from them? But I think it's hard to make that distinction because you're like cutting people.
So the first thing you're writing that's really easy is who makes your list, right? Who do you create value for? Write that list. Who creates value for you? Write that list. Here's your first friendly list. The people that you always create value for, but don't ever create value for you. They just got moved to the friendly list.
Smart man. Okay.
So now the second list on the friendly side is just go through and consider like in your life as if there's one door into your life. And if you leave that door unattended and unlocked, anyone can come into your room. Right? And they could make a mess of the room of your life. So the next part of the list is, what if someone was a bouncer at the door that always checked their values before they came in? And so you have to ask, is there a values match or a values mismatch? And so I had someone, since we're talking killing sacred cows, I was in strategic coach when I wrote the book and I was back in Chicago and my wife calls me, she's pregnant and she's bawling. And I'm like worried about the baby. But what I found out was, her reading group read Killing Sacred Cows, and she didn't feel good, so she didn't go. And they hated the book. They shredded the book. They were like, they're talking about grammar being wrong because it was my first version before it was published. Yeah. And one of them said, hey, what's this value creation thing? Everyone knows when you get a job, you're just supposed to do the least amount of work and to get the most money possible. And so anyway, she's crying. And when I found out it was just because of that, I said, babe, I'm so thankful they hated the book, because if they liked it, those terrible bitches, if they liked the book, it would have been the wrong book. So it means I wrote the right book, right? They made the friendly list. A lot of people on that made the friendly list. One in particular that when we had a cash flow crunch in our business, said to someone else, I'm so glad to see that Garrett's in pain with this situation. So that's an easy friendly list, right? And I didn't go confront it, because if you confront someone that's in that negative space, you get drawn into the drama. Don't get drawn into the drama. Just make it friendly where you don't invite them and you say no to their invites.
We can't have an extra not friendly list. Like, not that I'm going to put energy to it, but I would like to put that person on not the friendly list, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's going to be like that. Anyway, so I love the distinction between them.
I had 7 people on my list that were like, I don't even want to be friendly with them. I just want them completely out of my life. And by the way, 2 of those people within 5 years ended up in jail. So that was good. Smart that man. I cut them out of my life. Yeah. 2 of them in jail. And like 3 of the 7 were in my family. They're uncles that I just decided I wasn't going to spend time with, you know?
See, and they're hard to see. Like, that's the funny thing, is that we just assume the people around us is what we're given. Yay. But you can make conscious choices about all of it, to take or not take, whatever you can. Okay.
So, and then the final way to kind of figure out the list is pay attention for 1 month. Every time you get a phone call, did you want to answer that call or not want to answer that call? It's just the phone test. Good. It's that easy. I mean, like I'm making it as simple as can possibly be. And I would like to act like I created this content. This is just frameworks I made for my own life and that I use for my life that I'm now sharing.
So
you know?
you did create this. Yes, exactly. You did create it.
I didn't create it to be content. I just created it to make my life work.
You're like, easy. I'm a problem solver. I'm just going to solve all of the things. But that's I think what we learn as entrepreneurs as we're going through, and we're all doing this on our own. So to be able to hear you go, oh, I figured out this, we want to know how you figured it out, especially when it's logical like this, which thank you. Okay, going back to the other loop that we were talking about beforehand. Okay, because we've got a bazillion right now. So wherever you want to start, go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing to get out of scarcity, I said, is you're in a selfish space. So instead, think about what you do for others and call those people that you can contribute rather than complain to.
Yep.
Right? That was the first way to get out of scarcity. The second way to get out of scarcity is have someone that's either a peer that you totally respect or a mentor that you look up to. And when you're in scarcity, you call and you tell them you're in scarcity. And it could be a problem you don't know how to solve. That could be scarcity. And you just say, and look, most of the time, those are the people we never want to admit it to. Yeah. We want them to think everything's perfect. And I'll be like, I could come off a stage where I just taught about abundance. And then people think that must mean I must levitate in the air and frolic through fields all day and I'm totally abundant.
Right? You would look really great with your hair flat. No.
I have total scarcity in my life that comes up. The difference is 15 years ago, it consumed me. Now I have an awareness and I just say, okay, I'm in scarcity. And what can I now do to get out of it? So I might call a mentor and say, hey, I'm struggling with this right now. And guess what? They can ask me a question I have an answer to, but when I'm in scarcity, I can't ask the question of myself. So they're detached from the emotion. And because they don't have that attachment, they can more powerfully represent. Like I remember doing that event years ago where I was learning some, things about myself. And I decided, get up on the stage and let's deal with something. And I was figuring out why I was a certain way. 30 minutes on stage. Excruciating pain. Everyone in the room, hundreds of people already knew the answer. But because I was the one in the emotion, I'm the last one to get the situation. But then when I'm sitting in the crowd, I see it within seconds. Same thing when we're in scarcity. It prevents us from seeing reality in a powerful way. So you call up that mentor or that peer and you have a conversation and they ask you the question and then you move forward.
So when you're in that emotion though, like you're saying, it's hard to see anything. Can you push yourself outside of your comfort zone and be vulnerable with somebody when that is an issue in itself for most people?
Well, here's the thing. Authenticity is the new currency. And the word authenticity is actually being abused a little bit now.
Yeah.
Like, especially when a speaker's like, I'm so authentic. I'm like, that's the most inauthentic thing I've ever heard in a while. And you just said you're authentic, But what I find is when someone opens up to me, and is real with me, I can connect with them. Mm. Like the business owners in my life that I'm closest to are the ones where we shared the scars, where we talk about the issues we had. Like that's why a bio is kind of like, I don't know, bios are interesting because they just highlight some good things that the people don't even really identify themselves with.
Yeah.
And it ignores all the lessons that it took and the bumps and the failures and the mistakes. And it's like, so opening up to someone who is abundant, to someone that shares your values is great. Opening up to someone that should be on the friendly list is detrimental. They're going to use it against you, leverage it against you. But if you open up to the right people, like that actually will bond and connect you. There's a realness to that. And people are afraid of that. Look, and I'm still guilty of this because I'm like overly emotional when I watch shows. Like, come on, it's a show. The actors are fine afterwards. But I watched This Is Us the other day, and there's just like, I'm like sniffling and tears are coming down. My wife's sitting next to me, and I'm trying to pretend like I'm not crying, and I'm turning away. I lay in her lap, and she's like, I know what's going on. I'm like, shut up. I don't want to talk about it.
All the ladies in the audience are like, oh, we love you.
but it's like, there's still embarrassment for me there. Yeah. But like telling someone I just lost I remember I got notice that I was going to be hitting the New York Times. And within the same week, I got notice that I was going to hit the Inc. 500.
Wow.
And I didn't tell my wife because I also got notice that I lost $200,000 by making a huge mistake in real estate. And what do you think I was focused on? You
didn't tell her any of it, not even just the good and not the bad.
No, I told her about the real estate deal because she wanted to know I was being a grouchy ass. And so I said, well, I lost this money. And that's another thing. I'm in finance. I'm not supposed to admit to anyone that I lost money, right? I'm supposed to have always been Midas. I was supposed
You're
to just
invincible.
make the perfect decisions the whole way through. I mean, that's how I really developed Killing Sacred Cows. That was a confessional of all the mistakes I had made in my life that most people would never admit to. And therefore they stay stuck in it. But I asked the question, what could I learn from this? What could other people learn from this? What would I do differently? I just asked enough questions and was honest enough about it that I actually got a lot of insight because of it.
So where's that line though? And we'll go back to the loops in a second, but where is that line of sharing what's vulnerable or wrong right now, especially when you teach it, right? So do you tell people,
from the
hey,
stage, don't share what's going wrong right now, because then you leave your audience in pain where they're like, I really feel bad for this person up there. I hope they get off stage soon. You better have gone through it and you've got a solution. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good point.
Thank you for the clarification. Yeah. I think it matters for people.
But your inner circle of 5, you just share with them anytime. Your inner circle that's your as a man, my blood brothers, my band of brothers, as a I don't know, maybe as a female, it's the sisterhood of the, I don't know.
I got 4 guys in my mastermind group. Can't tell.
Yeah, so maybe
I got a band of brothers too, apparently.
Yeah. But in that place, I'm really safe to share. Yeah. It's really, really safe to share and willing to do it. So look, that's really the main 2 is getting out of selfishness and serving, and then admitting it and talking to someone that can actually ask you better questions. And then the third thing, because I did say there were 3, it's a daily habit, and I call it a producer power hour. That's my term for it. We were talking about our friend Hal Elrod. He calls it a miracle morning. But I really think just starting your day with certain habits and rituals that set you up for abundance. Because if we go out and the first thing we do is we wake up and we hit the ground running, noise enters our life, right? And we're just dealing with that all the time. And we're just more susceptible to scarcity. I think of the first thing in the morning, I got to put on my shield of abundance. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do some meditation. And when I'm really behaving well, I'm going to write a thank you note to someone and write in my 5-minute journal and write down my gratitude and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's how I'm going to start my day. If I start my day that way, the other hours are more productive. I feel more abundant because I've got that shield of abundance. Scarcity pings off of me. And if you do those 3 things, you can avoid scarcity so much. And yeah, we're just still talking chapter 1 of Killing Sacred Cows here somehow. Yeah.
So good. So good. So, because I think what's so important is the tactics of it to go along with the emotional side. So we have something to lean on when things get crappy, because otherwise we flail and then that just goes worse. And then we spiral more downward for complaining or whatever it is. And if you have a system or something that you need to do when this happens, like a trigger, it makes all the difference in the world. Okay. So going back.
And Jamie, think about like how many times do people, they're going through this and they just go and put on the happy face. Everyone knows you feel it, you sense it, you can tell, right? Yep. And so you're just like, oh, okay, well, this person's, if I believe I can achieve, and I just, I'm a positive thinker, so I'm going to ignore this that's going on, and it's just piling up, and eventually it's going to be a lesson that becomes more profound. Like lessons start as a feather on the face, and if we pay attention, it's not overly, it's not as emotional. But if we don't pay attention to the feather on the face, it becomes a brick to the face, and then it becomes like a punch to the face. And then eventually it's so much pain that we have to deal with it. I'd rather just use this other formula and deal with it ahead of time or while it's going on.
So are you good enough to know when it's just a feather? Because a lot of us have to get punched in the face to be like, oh, wait, that was something. Awesome. Great. Right.
Sometimes, but every now and again, I put on my rose-colored glasses and those glasses say, forget the intuition. Like the instances I can think of most profoundly is 3 different times. And all 3, I have to admit my wife was right. Her intuition was so right. Like the first one was this guy that was really prolific in business and he wanted to do stuff with me. And it was like, I was honored by that. And then turns out he was a shyster. And my wife told me from the beginning he was. And I was like, no. I'm a business guy. I know what's up. And she's like, so I ignored that. And that was like a feather. And then it turned into a brick. And I still ignored the brick. And going back, here's what's crazy. I remember going back to conversations I had with him where he talked about his deceit in other areas of his life.
And
like
you just
talking
didn't
about
even, because it didn't register? Oh,
it was like, because it's a good story. It's like, oh, once I got a job because I went to interview and they're like, have you ever seen this type of a system? And he's like, not that long ago, because he had just walked by it a minute ago, but he didn't know how to use it. And it's like, okay, that's a feather to the face, right? That's a feather,
wow.
you know? But then there was other signs beyond that. And so there were other situations like that.
What would you have done differently to tap, besides listening to your wife, which apparently you should definitely do, but what would you have done differently to notice those feathers intuition-wise?
One is I've just been getting so much more in tune with my intuition. And man, it's weird to say that because it feels a little airy-fairy.
Yeah.
And
Okay, me too, though. And I'm Miss Logical, so I'm glad you're saying it, not me.
Yeah.
But tell me more about how you do that, because I've been going, it's really, really, really important.
So I ignored my intuition last week. And then basically I got provided a huge reminder of why I should listen to it. And I actually ignored it twice last week after declaring I'm listening to it more. Like my intuition sometimes like turn left here, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm turning left here. This isn't the way I normally go, but I'm like, whatever. But I had a situation where I was filming, and Mick, I think you've met Mick with the fedora that's on my team.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'm gonna take my motorcycle up to Walla Walla, Washington, and we're in Salt Lake, and I'm like, really? And he had just gone to Thailand and rode his motorcycle for an entire week by himself in Thailand, and I was fine with it. But this time, I was like, man, I don't know. That doesn't sound right, man. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Like, I just don't feel good about it. And he's like, it'll be fine. I'm like, well, let's finish filming early. And like, I brought it up over and over. And he's like, well, I'll stop in Idaho and I'll stay the night. I'm like, okay, well, that makes me feel better. That'll probably be okay. But if anyone ever calls me, my ringer's never on, ever, ever. And that night I kept my phone by me, and my wife and I were sitting on our little porch swing and talking. And sure enough, he called. He freeway speed, crashed his bike. He's alive is the good news, but banged up pretty hard. So that was me not fully listening to my intuition. Look, the thing is, he could still do whatever he wants in life. Of course. But what I could have just said is, look, man, you do what you want, but I have a firm, this is not a good idea. And whatever I can do to dissuade you, persuade you, do whatever, like, can I pay to have that bike shipped up there and you just fly up there? Like, I could have just went into that next level because that's how I would have been. But instead, I kind of backed off. And then someone offered to do something in my firm. And I was like, intuition, I was like, no, not a good idea. No, but I was like, okay, well, let me interview everybody in the firm. And the first two people were like, that'd be great. So I was like, okay, maybe that'd be good. And then sure enough, 2 days later, the reason my intuition was going off, 3 things happened that were all exactly so I'm like, okay, I'm going to start. I said I was going to listen to it more, and then I didn't listen to it more. But you know why we don't? Is because it brings us to hard choices. It brings us to hard choices. And I think in life, we hope for the best and don't confront the hard thing, hoping that it'll just go away or that it won't be so hard down the road. But all I've found is it gets exacerbated down the road, right? And I call that hard easy versus easy hard. Okay. Easy hard is it's easy to sleep in. It's easy not to eat healthy. It's easy to not spend time with my kids and instead watch TV. There's so many things that are easy, but life gets harder every day with those choices. And it's hard sometimes to read, to learn, to invest in our education, to do whatever. But life gets easier because we make those choices. Here's the hard easy for me. Next week, I fly to London, and then from London, we go to Italy, and I'm there for 2 months.
Wow.
All right, taking my wife and kids. And you know what? I've got anxiety about it. It's a little stress. I'm like, okay, is the business ready for this? And I'm going to unplug. I canceled all my meetings. No one-on-one meetings when I'm over there, unless something comes up that we do a Skype call, but no recurring or anything. That's hard, but I think life's going to be easier because I'm going to really connect with my kids and have a great time with my wife. And we have some friends coming to visit throughout the time. So I know that this is supposed to be an interview, and I just keep
I love it. All of it. Well, what's funny is later I'll have you back because I want to do that with my kiddos. We were talking about going to Spain for a month or 2 months. So you're going to give me all your feedback later on what worked versus what didn't. But going back to the intuition side, because I think this is, number one, you're a guy talking about intuition, which is rare. Now, a lot of the millionaires I have on the show talk about their gut. They won't call it intuition. Yeah. They'll call it their gut. But still, where do you actually feel it? Because that's the other thing. Some people that are they meditate and they're like, oh, I have these thoughts that come up. Is it a gut thing for you? Where is it actually? And how do you actually pay more attention to it if you can't feel it?
So Sunday, it was coming here it was like my head was tingling.
Really?
On Saturday, it was like all the way from the top of my chest to my belly button. It was like right in there. Other times it might be the hair on the back of my neck. Like it's not like, and sometimes it's literally just a thought in my head. There's not even like a feeling. It's just, it's a voice that's not the scarcity voice. Because in our head, like we're having a primary conversation right now. I say something, you say something, but you and I are both having secondary conversations in our head, right? Which brought you to Spain or whatever in your head. So everyone has secondary conversations. Sometimes scarcity rules the secondary conversation, but a lot of times that's where intuition can have its voice. So we just have to distinguish, is this just because of my own fears, because of my past? Or is this something that is more about like, I don't know, like when I listen to intuition, it's not a scarcity-based thing because it's not really about the easiest thing all the time. It's a lot of times about a harder thing, you know? And even for me, like I'm vain. I'm like, I want to look good. Maybe it's like something I don't feel like I'm good enough or something like that. But like sometimes my intuition's like, literally, you need to sleep right now. Like this workout isn't going to help you. So I've just been listening to that. And my intuition told me, no more setting alarms. Just stop setting alarms. And the only time I set an alarm is for an early flight, or if I had to be on stage on the East Coast at 9 a.m., I might set an alarm. But I've just stopped doing that. And it's just allowed me to improve my life. My intuition said, stop looking ahead in your calendar. You're only allowed to look 24 hours ahead at any given time. And life got better.
Wow.
So there's those kind of things that have been really useful.
So how do we tell the distinction between what is potentially anxiety or scarcity or the wrong part of the inner voice, right? Or whatever that mindset is that isn't it, versus intuition?
See, that's the tough thing. I think that's really, really difficult. But the first thing is if that voice is asking you to do something that's a stretch or uncomfortable, that's about action, then that's good. If that voice is only about everything that could go wrong because of fear, which usually means a multitude of stories. Intuition doesn't give me 10 stories. Scarcity gives me 20. That's the biggest distinction.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard it put that way, because that's the thing. Your brain will start going nutso with certain types of things. But
it's
you're
like
right.
When someone lies to you, it's always so damn elaborate, It's like, well, and then you're like, God, that's a pretty elaborate thing there. Where like when someone tells the truth, a lot of times it's just really simple. And I look at this with my investing. When I invest, if someone takes too long to describe something, number one, or they can't tell me the downside, I don't care if it's even a potentially good investment. I walk away immediately. I'm just done with it, because I feel like a lot of language is required to deceive, where truth doesn't require that much.
A total difference between like IQ. What's so amazing is that you're the personal finance numbers guy telling us more about the EQ side of the way that you're making decisions, which is very impressive. I really feel like we're on a trajectory of people actually paying way more attention to EQ than just the numbers. That being said, numbers are important.
EQ will outperform IQ in the world of finance. And let's go to our early example before we were recording. Apple.
Ugh, yes.
Steve Jobs wasn't a numbers guy because he asked a question: how can I innovate? Their new team says, how can we profit? And that distinction shows exactly why you and I have had some horrific examples in our own life with what Apple's done, is because they changed the question based upon financial IQ. Because yes, they became more profitable when they watered down the soup. But at the same time, that will eventually have a reckoning. And so I love that I have a great CFO. He's great with the numbers. But I look at everything in our businesses. This is my question: how does it create value, and what's the impact? And I would be willing to sacrifice some profit for impact, but I would never be willing to sacrifice impact for some profit. Ooh. Because I have to live with it. And I also know we would be watering down the soup. And if we water down the soup, eventually and this might be a limit. This is I'm grappling with. So I'm letting you guys into my inner dialogue right now. I'm grappling with this whole concept of, to take my company to the next level, am I willing to do it? Because I don't want to go corporate. And I have to have conversations with my team to say, I believe in our model, this is where it caps out. And if we want to make more money than that, I think we're going to have to do, like, I think we're going to have you guys do other things that maybe Wealth Factory can support, but won't be Wealth Factory. They're not built for Wealth Factory. So here's a big conversation with that. I think that we're going to have a pretty major, like, I'm an optimist. I'll be the caveat, but we're going to have a major reckoning happen within the next few years. It's just, we have $20 trillion of debt.
Yep.
We have a society that's living longer, but living sicker. Like, I'm just watching all this. It's like, I look at even kids today, how much more we're spending just for women to get pregnant, for kids to be healthy, So even though we're living longer, we're more reliant upon the system, and there's a lot more people that are taxing that system. And that's going to eventually have a day where that's going to have a massive impact. So I'm going, I should build something that's a product for that, because I really feel like I have unique insight, but it's not Wealth Factory's brand.
Huh.
So if we did want to grow past what Wealth Factory could do, I'd be willing to license that type of content. I'd be willing to contribute that, but I would never allow Wealth Factory to touch that, because Wealth Factory is about boosting cash flow, living more abundantly, getting your financial house in order so you can swing for the fences in your business without putting yourself at financial risk. Like, I'm about changing people's financial future, their family's destiny. And the number one thing we're doing is getting 1 million entrepreneurs to economic independence by the time I hit the grave. So it wouldn't fit. So I'm grappling with these kind of questions right now. Is it a limiting belief, or is it simply intuition guiding me? And what am I doing for that? I'm having conversations with top relationships right now, people that I trust, people that I respect, people that have grappled with similar concepts in their life.
When you have those conversations, I'm assuming it's more than just a data, they think this. Is it how you feel about what they say? Like, how would you solve that problem, that decision that you have to make?
The first place I would go, and I don't talk business with my wife very often, but when I would talk to her, it would be about this type of a thing, right?
Yep.
Like, I had lunch today with an author that happens to be in town speaking. That his name's Brian. He runs a company called Board Meetings, where I took my son to, and we surfed during the day. They did personal development for the rest of the afternoon, and so I was bringing it up to him. I'm just getting his perspective, because I like his character. I like how he views the world. I call Rich Christensen, who's on my board and one of my inner circle, and I talked to him for an hour last night, and then he goes, I think you're on the right track. That makes sense. It's like, we're just having a conversation. It helps me process. What's weird is I create most of my content in the moment I'm speaking. Like, I've said stuff today that I haven't ever said before. I didn't say that happened, but it happened.
Oh yeah.
And so it's talking it out to a large degree.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm borderline. I would be more on the extrovert side overall, but I have to recharge in a personal way that I can't be around people all the time. But I would go nuts if I couldn't just go hang out and go do stuff with people. Like, that really excites me, but not all the time.
See, I asked the question too because I'm right on the borderline also, and I still have to talk out problems. I can't sit in my little meditation and be like, so let's figure out how I feel. I have to actually verbalize it in order to actually get feedback back. That's really interesting. Do you feel like you have a timeline for this though? That's the other piece.
No.
So you don't. So you're just sort of playing with it instead of going like, I would like to figure this out by this date and time.
Yeah, I once tried to put a really hard timeline on our vision. And it was actually limiting as much as people might think it's expanding. Like, I think it's really helpful. I have 5 objectives every quarter. So 5 objectives. I think more than 5 is taxing. And I think 3 to 5 is really good. And they're pretty specific. Like, I know whether I accomplish them or not. So I get that value. But there's some things that if we put a deadline on that in our life, it's harmful. I just reread Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Wow,
we have this reading group I put together with 4 other of like high-end people that I knew that, I just wasn't reading enough books for a while. Having kids and business, I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? I'm going to have 4 other people join me once a month on a phone call. We're going to pick a book, and if I don't read it, I'm going to disappoint people I don't want to disappoint, so it creates accountability. So we read Man's Search for Meaning. By the way, I call it the Accelerated Learning Group, but Brian Kurtz in the group calls it the Oprah Reading Club. So
I love Brian. Brian's a friend of mine. He's been on the show too. Yes. He's smart. You should go with him. He's the copywriter.
Yeah. So he loves to joke about that, but we've built kind of a really good bonding scenario there. So anyway, I read that book, Man's Search for Meaning, again, and I realized that some people, when they put a deadline, they end up dead. So people were in the concentration camp and said, if we don't get out by this time, then I'm not going to be able to handle it. And they didn't. And there was someone like Viktor Frankl that says, I have a gift for humanity. I have to do whatever it takes to get it out there. And so for a huge vision, don't put this deadline that ends up crippling you if you're not getting there. But for objectives that are measuring progress and helping you, like I like objectives because it keeps me from saying yes in times I shouldn't say yes. Because I think the hardest skill, or at least one of the top 10 skills as a business owner, is knowing when to say yes and when to say no. And too many business owners say yes to things that do make them money, but cost them much more money by saying yes, because it actually takes abundance to say no. Warren Buffett said the difference between successful entrepreneurs and highly successful entrepreneurs, or you might have said investors, I'm saying it in a paraphrased way, is the successful ones are addicted to yes, and the highly successful ones say no, 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 unless it's perfectly aligned with their vision and values.
I love that. And you need to have the vision and values that feels aligned before you can measure whether or not whatever this thing is works.
Right. And business owners discount vision. I'm telling you, they do. They discount vision. But vision is the container your business exists in. And if we're so busy trying to make money and working, and this is where business owners burn out, is we love our business. We love our customers. So we're heroic about it. We'll do whatever it takes. And sometimes we're the lowest paid people in the business because of that. But that's time that we're not thinking, we're burning out. Like in my 20s, people say, oh, you live in Utah, do you ski? I'm like, no, I own a business. What's your hobbies? Business. What do you do for fun? Business. I mean, it was pretty much, that was my answer. And you know what? I was less productive. It was work to actually take time away for vision. Because now back then I would calculate time for money. I'd be like, oh, I'm not in the office, I'm not making money right now. But vision is the rarest commodity in the world. And most people, when they say they have a vision, they have a crappy mission statement that lives on the wall and no one has it in their heart and no one's living by it. Like, I hate the ones that are like, we're great at customer service. Of course, yeah, you're good at customer service. Every business should be good at customer service. But even worse, sometimes they're like, the customer comes first. That is a recipe for disaster. The customer should never come first. You should come first. Your team should come second. Your customers should come third. And if your customers are a-holes, you fire them so you can protect your team.
Yes.
I'm telling you, it's stupid to take the customer side if they're not nice people and if they're in the wrong. You know, it's like, I don't want to point at their finger and say, you're so wrong, but I don't want them to be able to, you know, get away with stuff that my team doesn't feel protected. So, you know,
and it's funny. It all seems logical when you say it, and people are doing it though all the time and not paying attention to it enough, especially on the visioning side.
Yeah. My very first assistant, one of my really good friends referred me to his dad, and he became a client, and he was super mean to Amy on the phone. And I wasn't there. And when I came in, she was a little emotional. I was like, what's up? She's like, oh, nothing. And I was like, well, by the way, when someone says nothing, I'm like, okay, well, let me pull up a chair. You know, if you don't want to share this with me right now because it's really personal, I'm totally understanding. If you need to take some time off today, that's totally cool. But if it's something that has to do with here, please share it with me. And by the way, thank God, Amy, my first assistant, before I was definitely not as self-aware as I am now. I used to get super angry with customer service people and be kind of an a-hole. And she was like, I need you to be less angry. And I never saw myself as angry until she said that.
I was just going to ask you, how did you start off this evolved, or has it been a progress? No. Okay, good.
I've spent a lot of money to figure this out. And by the way, you know, I've been kind of back into a place where in the last month, I've had a couple situations, like, you know, about my Apple situation, where I started getting really negative, and I was like, I had to turn it over to people because I'm like, I don't like how I'm behaving. I don't like how I'm acting right now. So I'm aware enough to know that I'm being that way, but I'm not like immune to it. But back then, you know, this guy Bob was super mean to her. She tells me about it, and I called him on speaker right in front of her. And I said, hey, Bob, how's it going? He's super nice to me. Oh, awesome. How you doing, man? I'm like, well, I've been better. And as a matter of fact, that's why I called. I'm like, you know, Amy really seemed shook up about your last conversation, but I just want to say, if you want to continue to work with me, that you're definitely going to have to call and apologize to her, and it could never happen again. So this is just your notice. I really care about you, but Amy's so important to me, and I just can't allow people to treat her that way. And you know what? She was so much more safe in the business space. We worked together for 10 years. The only reason that she stopped working for me is because in business, we have these different phases. Like business, I think when you start, it's like a sailboat, kind of exciting, but a lot of work. And you hire an assistant to help you because you get exhausted. But sometimes the winds are blowing, sometimes they're not, sometimes you're in waves. And then you see like this speedboat cruise along. You're like, damn, we want a speedboat. So you upgrade to a speedboat. And not everybody that was working on a sailboat likes speedboats. So when you upgrade your business, maybe you're trying to get to a yacht or a battleship. Some people don't like that. And I had this epiphany in business where Amy was always someone I just handed tasks to. She loved it. She'd do the task and wait for the next thing. But eventually I said, I'm not going to delegate. I'm not delegating tasks anymore. I'm delegating roles. This is what you're responsible for. Here's the 5 objectives. However you want to get there, I support as long as it looks like this in the end. And she didn't like that. She liked that boutique, just me and her. And once we expanded, it was tough. But, I ran into her last year. We had a great hour-long conversation at the 4th of July thing. Our family's standing around waiting for us to finish reminiscing. But we had a great relationship. It's just that business evolves. And that's another one of the top 10 hard things is to let people go or to fire someone. That is super hard.
I had a client do that last week, and it was his first one, and like called before, you know what I mean? I'm like, text me before. This is you being the business owner you need to be, and it's tough because it's emotional too. Like even thinking about it, it gets you emotional, and no offense, sometimes it's easier on the person that you're letting go than it is on the person that has to do it because you feel very responsible for it. If you're a good boss, I should say.
Oh, totally. I fired in this office that we're at Wealth Factory headquarters. I fired someone because, great coach for us, but he would always think that he could do it better than I could because you don't understand all the invisible pieces happening in a business. Yeah. So finally, we don't tolerate gossip here. I felt it got gossipy, so I called him into my office, and I had to tell at that time, my CEO, who's now our chairman, I said, okay, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to fire him. He's like, I'll fire him. I'm like, no, I hired him. I'm going to be a big boy. I don't want to, but I'm going to do it. You need to come in 20 minutes. I'm not allowed to chicken out. You come in 20 minutes. I'm going in there. And when he came in, the guy's crying to me. He's like bawling about being fired. And I'm like heartbroken, but thank God, in comes the CFO to hand the CEO to hand the package and the severance. So
smart man.
Yeah.
And it still freaking sucks either way, no matter what it is, even though justified, whatever it is, it still sucks as a business owner either way.
Yeah, it's still a human being. It's still someone that, once again, at one time, or even still then, you still see good in them. You still see assets about them. It's still, not and just the real reason why where I could take responsibility is the Peter principle. If everyone's familiar with the Peter principle, you got to be really careful with this. This is where you get someone, let's say they're really good at something. People typically get promoted till they're a degree out of their ability. So we love what they do and what they're really good at. And I actually went to a client, court case this year. He was being sued by an employee. And afterwards, we had lunch after I was on the stand for him. And he was stressed about it. And I said, you know what really happened here? I said, she's frustrated with you. You're frustrated with her. But here's the bottom line. It's the Peter principle. She was awesome as a coach, right? He's like, yeah, the best. I'm like, right. And then what'd you do? You promoted her to executive. And you're just as demanding as you ever were because you're a demanding dude. I'm like, I know. I consider you one of the more demanding relationships I have. It's not that you changed. It's that she couldn't perform anymore. And now that demanding felt negative to her because she couldn't solve it. So that's where this whole blow up happened. And so that's really why I had to fire him, is because I promoted him beyond his ability, then had to put him back down to the place where he was really good. But, it's kind of like, he could never get over that. He always wanted to be that other thing. And so my mistake for promoting him, but I had to deal with the cleanup, right?
See, okay, but I know we have to start wrapping up in a second, but I have to go a little deeper into this because how do you know? Like, you don't know if you're pushing them too far or if they're evolving and will be fine.
It's skill set. So here's how you know.
Okay.
There's a few pieces. The first is, I'll just use what I learned from Strategic Coach. Mm-hmm. They talk about these 4 characteristics. There's things that we're incompetent at. There's things we're competent at. Yeah. There's things we're excellent at. And there's things we're unique at. So in my world, I call it soul purpose. Soul purpose is your values, your abilities, and those are the 4 types of abilities, basically. Passions combined for the highest vision. So if you have someone that's working with you, the less you know about their sole purpose, which is that unique combination, the more likely you're going to make a mistake at where do you put them.
Oh.
Because they might have the right attitude, they might have a good culture fit. But what you really have to understand is, and here's some ways that you can do that. Take an activity inventory with them where they can write it on a 3x5 card. They can just write it on a sheet of paper or on their iPad or whatever. But every activity they do for the business over a month's period of time, and then you just go through and say, did this activity add energy or subtract energy, or was it neutral on every single activity they do? And then you start to get a sense of what they're good at. And then you look at those characteristics, and over time, you see how those apply. And then you just test them with a small project. Then you test them with a small opportunity to see how they handle it. And rather than just moving them up. And sometimes when you hire, what you have to say is, we're looking for this, and this is all there is. Like chief of staff I just hired, I said, there is no promotion. Is this something you see yourself doing for the rest of your life? You can make more money because you get a piece of everything that I'm producing, but there is no promotion above chief of staff. So are you cool with that? Or if you hire an assistant, just telling him, hey, this is it. Can you live with this? Is this part of your purpose? Is this part of your abilities? And that helps you out a whole bunch too. And it doesn't mean that you'll be flawless with it. It just means that you have to be more frequent with it. When we're less frequent, meaning we don't course correct because we don't address it and we hope that it'll change, it becomes a huge problem. If we course correct, it's just creating measures. And I like with new things to have weekly measures. When they start getting better, it can go to monthly. When they get better, it can go to quarterly. And when they're really solidified, I can completely delegate that out, that I don't have to manage it at all anymore.
Okay. So it's funny because you said a bunch of different pieces within all of this, right? So even just in the leadership role of you trying to not groom, but to find out what somebody's strengths are and put them in projects for testing. So will their manager be paying attention to how they're doing, like weekly, monthly, and their competency on that side of things? And how do you do that? How do you judge that?
Well, the way we operate is more about having like huddles and meetings more than individual management. Yeah. So that we could do it in a group sense. Is it based on Scrum, or it's funny, Cameron Harold's, I'm interviewing him tomorrow. So like, you tell me. He's brilliant, by the way. I love Cameron. He's really brilliant. Yes, I agree 1,000%. But he also talks about huddles. So is it a similar structure? Can you just go over that structure really quick? I know we have to start wrapping up, but I love this stuff. Everyone has different philosophy on this, and it works different in different cultures. For us, I just decided I want to hire as many people that are just phenomenal at handling things on their own, that they're entrepreneurs. And we compensate accordingly, meaning we are not on the time and effort economy anymore. I don't care about someone's time and effort. I care about the results and implementation. So we just structure it where you get paid very little salary at our firm, and half of our people get paid no salary. And when you produce, you get paid, because most people don't want to be business owners. They just want unlimited upside potential, because being a business owner means lawsuit and you're a partner, you got to deal with it. Yep. Capital call, everybody deals with it. No paycheck this month, everybody deals with it. But unlimited upside potential is where most people want to be. So we just trigger that their activities are on 5 objectives, and those 5 objectives relate to the 5 objectives for the firm, and then they're compensated by how they're doing in their objectives. They can get bonuses, or that's what's going to help them make the money that they want to make, because it's been reverse engineered. And we're hiring a COO right now who will probably add some more of the individualism. We just don't have the time to be really individual right now outside of the sales team. Our marketing team meets together as a marketing team. Our sales team meets as a sales team. They meet together once a month. Like, we just kind of create accountability structure, but we try to do it as a group as much as possible. Then I do a State of the Union meeting once a month with the whole team, with everybody. How big is your team right now? We're right around 20. Nice. It's funny, I just had Alex Sharfin, I think you might know him too, talking about some pieces of this same thing. So what I think is... He's the one intense individual, man. He's very intense. Go! But what's amazing is you guys are saying very similar things on getting an entrepreneur, getting somebody who can actually make decisions instead of you being the one decision maker.
and then having to like give everybody everything because you can't grow.
I had an interview today with someone to be one of our cash flow optimizers or cash flow finders, or potentially even move into our financial architect role. And he's only dealt with salary his whole life. And I said, in this role, we pay zero salary. So it may not work for you. And there's always a ramp up time. So you'll probably make less until you really get a handle, because our minimum, I think you got to be with us 9 months before you can become a financial architect, because it's a pretty comprehensive position that navigates people's entire financial life. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just like being really upfront with them and managing the expectation.
I love it though, because then they will either go all in or they won't, right? And it should be pretty apparent pretty quickly on whether they're a good fit or not, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Yep. What's
it.
funny is I think you asked one question about killing sacred cows. I said I would cover 4 things. So maybe we just give people the book instead.
We're gonna give them the book. So let me ask the last question, then we'll tell everybody where they can get the book, because You're right. We went on tangents and I love it. And we should totally have you back on because you're awesome. So what's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of $1 million, besides killing sacred cows, which we'll give them in a second. Go.
Yeah, I'm going to give them this is a tough one. It's a tough one.
Good. They deserve it.
But if they do it, this will be the biggest impact. We talk friends versus friendly. And I'm sure that everyone has heard, read, knows, look at your top 5 relationships and the people you spend your time with. Like, we hear about that all the time. But what has been underemphasized, but is critically more important, is you could have 100 amazing relationships willing to provide all the value in the world. But it only takes one a-hole to ruin all that. So everyone has to look into their life to determine who's someone that their intuition has told them it's time for them to remove them from their life, not spend time with them anymore, and it's time to move them to the friendly list, to start saying no to all their invitations. And then I would say, I know it's one gold nugget, but make your great list, but make a list of people you've never met that if you met would take you to another level. Because just by listing it, you can start being reminded of it. We made a list of 10 people back in 2005 when we started our radio show, and we got 9 out of 10 people that we met within 3 months, because you end up mentioning it on a radio show. Someone knows them. When people say, "What can I do for you?" You say, "Hey, do you know so-and-so?" I mean, it's in today's world, it's easier than ever, but people are afraid to write down those names. Write down the names of people you've never met that can add value to your life, and eliminate the a-hole that's distracting from your life right now. Yeah.
That alone changed my life. And what I didn't realize when I wrote my 5, which you burn the list right later, so nobody looks at who the a-holes are. But my 5, I didn't realize that you keep leveling up and you keep leveling, and you're like, oh wait, no, there's more distinctions as you keep going, and what you're okay with versus what you're not okay with. Very, very impressive. Everybody, make sure you do this right now, because if you don't, it's your own damn fault. Okay. So tell us where we can go and get the book, because I'm sure everybody wants it now that we touched on one piece that was amazing, along with 1,000 others, and then the rest of it.
So if they text 801-396-7211, and then they put in the subject line KSC, not KFC like the chicken place, but KSC as in killing sacred cows, 801-396-7211, text KSC. I'll contribute a download to you, which is the newest version of the book that we just did a new version in 2017 here. And then if you want the audiobook, I do have a publisher, so I have to pay the cost to them. So I'm passing it on, so it's a lot less than if you buy it on Audible. And I just recorded that November of 2016. So I did my own little intros to the chapters and stories and stuff beyond just that. So yeah, that's what they can do. Is they can grab Killing Sacred Cows on me as a gift, and if they want some more and they like to listen, they can grab that audiobook at a better price than Audible or something like that.
Smart man, because everybody listening likes to listen to stuff. Who knew? What a surprise. Yeah. Thank you so much, Garrett, for coming on the show today. It was so impressive. I know I've known you from before, and I didn't know how brilliant you were. So thank you for sharing your insights and our crazy open loops. I really appreciate it.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me. You're a great interviewer, and I love your reactions and just laughing and good energy. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And if you want to check out more amazing resources, I'm only curating the best of the best. Go check out eventualmillionaire.com. You can take the Eventual Millionaire quiz, figure out where you are in business and what you need right now. Plus, you can look at curated resources specifically for you on the new Start Here page. I'm so excited. Please join us. Please let me know if you need anything at all. I'm here for you. And have a fantastic day. Bye.